Hello again, Sandwich. I'm Greg Anderson. Last May, if you were at town meeting, were you? Well, if you were, you witnessed the first go-around of recommendations to change the town's charter. If you were there, perhaps it was a little confusing, a lot of discussion. Well, it's all coming back for your vote at town meeting again in May with some changes, modifications. A lot of work has been done. Let's take a look at what those changes are with Charter Review Committee Chairman Dave Sampson. Hello,
How are you,
David.
Greg?
How are you?
Good to see you.
All right, so last May, it all came up before the town meeting. You walked away, you and the committee walked away with homework. What have you guys been working on?
Yeah, so we had some success at that town meeting. The town clerk was moved from an elected position to an appointed position.
Right.
So that's off the books. That ship has sailed. That's closed. The town basically decided they were disinterested in pursuing anything around a representative town meeting form of government. So that's also closed, subject no longer up for discussion. So the remaining items as part of the charter were kind of a group of items that were bundled together. So there was 3 articles during the last town meeting. All of those items remain outstanding.
Okay.
And there's some that are probably more significant than others. There's some that folks may find more interesting or controversial than others, depending on their individual perspectives.
Okay. One of the areas of interest, and we're going to walk through some of these, and I'm interested in having you unpack them as best as you can. But there is a piece of how do we get people to be more knowledgeable of what they're going to vote for. Hopefully this discussion will help. But if I am out there and I'm thinking, hey, what are these changes? How can I learn about it? Where can I get a copy? What does that look like?
The best opportunity to get a copy of that, well, when the warrant's published for the town meeting warrant, there will be a copy of the charter in the back, and it will have a marked up version. So it will actually show the language being removed, changed, added, etc. throughout the entire document. So the warrant is published to the public at least 2 weeks prior to town meeting, so that'll be available. The Charter Review Committee's meetings are available on demand here on Sandwich Community Television, and also our minutes and agendas and any other such types of documents are available on the town website at sandwichmass.org.
Okay.
So those are always good resources.
Let's go.
And honestly, I'd suggest, this issue aside, right, if you're coming to town meeting, you want to go online and download the warrant and read it in advance. That would be my recommendation to anyone, regardless of the topic, if you're attending the meeting.
Go in informed, because those who are not informed are usually the ones that are standing up, taking a lot of time, kind of.
It can get interesting.
It can get interesting.
Everybody has
That's a nice way to say
their
it.
personal approach to town meeting, and I entirely respect that. I am a fan of efficiency. So, let's get in, let's do our business and go home. So if you have the opportunity to do some homework in advance, then great.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this. So town meeting, this is Monday, May 6th, where folks are going to come in for this meeting, and tell me what we can expect as it relates to the charter changes.
Okay, so the previous town meeting was 3 articles on the warrant that were separated into different areas. One of the pieces that came back, or maybe points of frustration for some folks attending the meeting, was that they actually felt there should be more specificity to each of the articles. So too many things bundled together.
Okay.
Out of really frustration more than anything else, the Charter Committee was interested in perhaps presenting 8, 10, 12 or more articles, which would be extremely cumbersome and time consuming, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Beyond that, in discussions with town council's recommendation is that this just be put into a single warrant article. So the question then becomes, okay, town meeting members asked for more specific articles that are broken out. Why are we coming back with one? So the first thing I'd say is this: the Charter Review Committee has absolutely zero authority to put articles on the town meeting warrant. The only way the town meeting warrant is established is via the select board. They have the authority to put articles on the warrant. The only other way that articles can go on the warrant is via a citizen's petition. So on town council's advice, the Charter Review Committee did vote to support the single warrant article, and the select board has moved forward with that. So what will likely occur, and I've worked with the town moderator, Gary Blank, is that we will present the article, the motion will be made, we will review the changes, likely more extensively than we were allowed to do last year. And there will be opportunities for folks to make motions to amend the motion on the floor. So just from a parliamentary procedure perspective, right, there'll be a motion to move forward with the warrant article as presented, which would be inclusive of all changes. However, if you wanted to modify some item within the change document, you could say, this section of the charter, I would like to move to change this to this. There will be a vote on that change, and that would actually amend the motion that was on the floor prior to a larger vote.
Okay, so
And that's probably a little bit confusing.
yeah. How is that going to be explained to people in there who are ultimately going to say, wait a minute, everything got bundled back up again?
Yeah, so I will certainly do my best to explain this as I can. It's really the duty of the town moderator to explain how this moves forward. He's been very cooperative in wanting to support us however we can. There were other concerns from town council regarding splitting this up into multiple articles, and if folks want to know more about that, I'd encourage them to go watch the last Charter Review Committee meeting when town council was there talking about that.
Okay.
But there can start to be dependencies and other points of confusion that probably don't make sense. And the other thing is, when this moves forward to Beacon Hill to be approved by the legislature, it could also create some complications there. So that's how we end up back at a single warrant article. So what we're trying to do is kind of check off some of the concerns of town council, yet give people the flexibility that they're looking for at the same time.
Okay.
So the context of that article being the entire charter, they'll still have the opportunity to make modifications to the motion on the floor.
Okay. So we have, I'd like you to bring forth the changes or the modifications in not necessarily in priority, but what are the ones that are going to be most of interest to people that could lead to some discussion and debate?
So we're talking about Article 16. The warrant draft that I've reviewed has about 23 articles on it as of today.
Okay.
And that includes the election, which takes place on Thursday. So we'll be Article 16 unless something changes, but I don't expect that at this point. That ship may have sailed as well. Probably one of the larger items that I think will be of focus and attention is the town manager residency requirement.
Okay.
So the existing town charter has a residency requirement for the town manager. And the town manager is intended to be a resident or become a resident within 6 months of the town, but the existing charter language allows the select board actually to override that
Oh,
in the existing charter.
Okay.
So we've actually simplified the language. So the existing charter is more so about directing the selectmen a little bit to that this is a requirement, but it kind of gives them a out. The language has been modified such that it's not really a directive at all. So that's a point of concern for a lot of folks. Folks want the town manager to live in the town. They want the town manager to be on the same playing field as the taxpayers. And I certainly see and respect that point of view. The reason that this was even evaluated in the first place is that our longtime town manager is likely to retire at some point in the relatively near future, some number of years. Right, and we're going to need to go out and seek a new town manager. So that would effectively limit us from evaluating perhaps the best candidates. I mean, there are
Because they
different
live in
discussion,
New
yeah,
Bedford,
or they live
Plymouth
in, or they might live in Florida. I don't know where they live, right?
Right.
Folks search all over the nation for some of these jobs. I mean, doesn't mean that there's not qualified people in town, because I know that there are.
Right.
But part of a residency requirement or a timeline to move could be an obstacle for some folks, and we wanted to take that off the table. Now, and at the end of the day, this is what I'd say. The select board still has the authority to negotiate a contract with the town manager and require them to live in town, regardless of what the charter says. The existing charter empowers the select board to dismiss the requirement to live in town. So we're not really changing that much. It appears like a very significant change.
Yeah.
But like I was mentioning previously about the warrant articles, the power remains with the select board. Your select people are very important people when it comes to these types of decisions. This is their job.
Right.
This is why we elect them to put in a whole bunch of time operating the town, right? So who is sitting in those seats? It really comes down to their decisions around these topics more so than anything else.
Okay.
So I think that's a big one.
Yep.
The other one that I would classify as maybe a big one is the modification of the citizens petition articles to require 50 signatures at annual town meeting. Now, the existing town charter complies with Mass General Law. Mass General Law says that for a regular annual town meeting, a citizens petition article requires 10 signatures, and for a special town meeting, a citizens petition article requires 50 signatures. Why, I have no idea.
Yeah, why
this
the
doesn't
difference?
even make sense to me.
Yeah.
And my personal argument around this, and it's one that I believe in, so that the proposal is to basically create parity there, it'll be 50 signatures for either, is that if you know, first of all, it's simple, it's easy to understand if we have 50 signatures for either, but if you're going to bring a citizens petition article forward to town meeting, and it requires the signatures of only 10 registered voters of the town, does that really represent support for what you're trying to move forward?
Yeah.
And is it appropriate to consume the cycles of hundreds of people around that topic based on gathering 10 signatures? So the 50 signatures does create parity, but it also makes the petitioner have to put in a little bit of work to actually bring that forward. At the end of the day, 50 signatures is still not a lot. So I think the counter to this argument would be, well, geez, you're creating an obstacle to people from participating in town government with their initiatives. I don't really believe that's true. 50 is not a lot.
Yeah, especially if 50 is on the books for a special town meeting.
Right, which I wish that I would bet you if I went to Beacon Hill or somebody at the State House Library and asked these questions, they would tell me how this came to be, but it does make me scratch my head.
Yeah.
Because what's the difference between a special town meeting and an annual town meeting? They're very similar events. They just happen at different times. I don't know.
But you don't expect that to be up for contested, not contested, but you don't think people are going to complain about that?
It could be.
Really?
I think one of the things I would say is that, and having served as selectman for 6 years, what you learn is that you don't always know how people personally identify with issues. So I know there's people that feel very strongly that this should be 100 signatures. And I know there's people that feel very strongly that it should be less to allow the most opportunity to put items on the warrant as possible. So, you know, I think we've found a balance. I would have supported 75 or 100 signatures from my personal perspective, but I do think just leveling the playing field on it is something that makes sense.
Okay. All right. What else? What else do we have?
So there is a modification in here that allows school committee members to be compensated.
So Kevin Sorrell brought this one up.
He did.
And
current chairman of the school committee, for those who may not be aware.
Yeah. Okay, so this may become one for discussion.
Well, I think this will be the discussion, right? So Mass General Law prohibits school committee members from being compensated, as does our existing charter. So this opens the door for school committee members to be compensated. That being said, so select board members are compensated, town clerk, the elected town clerk, and I assume that when he becomes appointed, he'll continue to be compensated.
Yeah.
Board of assessors are compensated. Kevin said, you know, the school committee members, why are we prohibited from being compensated? Now, again, the history with Mass General Law would probably be interesting to find out, but I will say this. The school committee members, which there are 7, serve on some number of subcommittees that I don't even know. They have many, many, many more meetings than the regular school committee meeting that you see that's televised.
Yeah.
Is there an argument to compensate them for that? Maybe there is. At the end of the day, if they're going to be compensated or not on the town meeting warrant, and it's one of the first couple articles, it actually might be in the first two articles, I think. There is a schedule of compensation for the selectmen, the town clerk, the assessors, the town moderator, the folks that get compensation. So in order for them to be compensated, it would have to be incorporated into that article, and it would have to be voted on by town meeting. So they can't just go out and decide to start compensating themselves.
Yeah.
And even if they were to get compensated, I wouldn't expect it would be something that was
What
far.
are selectmen compensated?
I think it's $3,500 a year.
Okay, so we're
And the
talking
chairman,
about that.
$5,000 a year.
Okay,
And, it's not a, irrelevant amount of money.
Yeah.
For an elected local board member, it's, generally at least enough to pay for the
Yeah.
required therapy fees that you need to go through
Yeah,
from
exactly.
participating in that process, at least in my
Right.
personal experience. But
right. Your therapy bills must be pretty steep.
well, I bring it on myself, and I think that a lot of folks in town realize that as well as myself. I mean,
Right.
self-recognition is important.
Yeah.
But we have to get in front of these things, and somebody has to
Yeah.
do this work. And
Somebody has to.
I'm happy to step in front of those trains.
There you go. Excellent. Good. So, do you think this is gonna be an issue?
I would be. I'm not a gambler, pretty much ever.
Mm-hmm.
I would predict that there'll be some strong opposition to this
Okay.
on town meeting floor.
Got it.
I could be wrong. This is just my best guess.
You have been wrong
from
many times.
Many times.
Yeah.
I was right once.
Right. Okay. Give me another one. I'm looking at all of these
So
here.
the gender neutrality.
Yep.
So basically eliminating anything that says selectman or chairman to select board, chairperson.
Yep.
That will be a blanket change, and we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate that there's a lot of opposition to that. I think there's some. It was spoken against at the last town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing I will say about that particular item is this: if we do send this forward to Beacon Hill and that change is not there, they're likely going to send it back.
Oh, interesting.
So that's basically something that the
Especially
Commonwealth,
this Beacon Hill.
the Commonwealth is pushing, like this is required.
Yeah.
Let's see. The existing charter requires a special election to be called upon the vacancy of a member of the select board or the school committee if that vacancy occurs more than 8 months from the next annual town election. So the annual town election would be every spring. It's on the Thursday following town meeting. So a couple changes have been made here. One is empowering the select board to call a special town election less than 8 months from the next annual town election. So what if something occurs, and during my tenure, we lost Peter Bushman, who was very dedicated servant of the town for a long time, and we operated with 4 members from the time of his passing until the next election, and it was okay at the time for us to run with 4 members. It worked.
Yeah.
But there could be situations where maybe that's not okay. Maybe we need to put somebody back in that seat. Maybe it was right within that 8-month timeline, and we don't want to run with 4 board members.
Right.
So running elections costs something, costs probably easily $10,000. So it's not a small decision, but at the moment, it's not a choice. So we've put the choice on the table as an opportunity for town meeting as part of that change. But at the same time, and we did this, it was during the COVID time that we had town meeting in the gym at the high school. We actually put forward a article on the town meeting warrant to do this as a one-time event. But Mass General Law allows a joint vote of the existing school committee and select board to replace school committee members. However, the charter ran that same requirement. If a school committee member leaves and it's more than 8 months from the next annual town election, call a special election to replace them.
Yeah.
So we've put in the suggested changes to the charter to align with Mass General Law, allow that joint vote between those 2 boards, and to replace a school committee member in that manner if required.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Because again, if it was more than 8 months, they would actually be required to call a special, there's 7 people on the school committee, but, if you're 9 months, they'd be required to spend that money and go through the effort to call a special town election for one race and one seat, right? And it doesn't really make sense, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
I do think also, along with the school committee items, and this is, I think, the last school committee item, but prohibit school committee members from working for the Sandwich Public Schools for 12 months after their service on the school committee. So if you've been a member of the school committee, it would prevent you from resigning or having your term expire and heading down the street to apply for a job at the Sandwich Public Schools for 12 months, which is just something that seems to make common sense to enough folks that it was supported by the Charter Review Committee. And
so right now, how is it worded right now?
there's no such prohibition.
Oh, there's nothing.
And the State Ethics Commission generally prevents selectmen from doing such a thing. The town charter does prevent selectmen from working for the town for 1 year. It's actually explicitly stated in the charter. The ethics thing might be a little fuzzy. They might need to make a determination, but it is in the charter. So we said, when Kevin came and said, the selectmen can be compensated, we want to be compensated. This also came up and said, well, okay, if we're gonna compensate you because you want to be treated equally with the selectmen or more equally with the selectmen, we should probably evaluate this other item as well.
Yeah.
And that's how this came up.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. You give us another one here.
I was thinking this morning when I was getting ready to come over to see you that I think I might be your most frequent guest.
We don't need to bring the tenor down and be depressing to everybody.
But I'm actually
I
now.
think you're right.
Based on this meeting, I think I could maybe be here by myself. I'm just gonna.
I
just keep going.
I don't even know what we're talking about here. So, what is this discussion about?
We all know that I need some direction, so you're definitely doing something. So that covers most of the school committee items. I think the other items that were kind of interest previously were the items that the finance committee was concerned about. So one of the things that was suggested to be removed previously that's been kind of put back in is providing historical data within the warrant regarding financial articles.
Okay.
And that was removed based on the fact that very often a financial article may not have historical data. So for example, if we were going to go spend on a wastewater project that, we're going to build the XYZ wastewater project that never existed before.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, that data doesn't exist.
Okay.
That was brought up as a point of concern, so that's been put back in. And the language is modified to say if it exists. It used to not say if it exists. It just said all financial articles must contain historical data, but very often there just was none.
There was none.
So that's how we got to changing it in the first place.
Okay.
Another piece would be the increase of the town manager's spending authority from $1 million to $1.5 million. This was suggested at $2 million last spring.
Mm-hmm.
The finance committee very much wanted it to be $1.5 million, so we've gotten to $1.5 million. What this means is that the town manager has the authority to sign contracts up to $1.5 million without explicit authorization from the select board. So if it was $1.5 million and $1, it would have to come to a select board meeting, be on the agenda, be discussed.
Has this
presented.
been an issue at all?
It slows things down sometimes. So the $1 million was put in place, many years ago, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of projects and the value of money has changed in that time.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to have a selectmen's meeting just to get the town manager authorized to sign a contract
Right.
when the project's ready to go. So that was really the intent behind this. Now, it's not like the town manager can say, we're going to go sign this $1.5 million project today. Let's get a contract. I want to go out and let's blow $1 million.
Right.
That money has to be allocated in the budget. The town manager doesn't have the ability to just arbitrarily decide
Right.
where to spend. So this would just enable him to do his job more efficiently and quickly.
Okay. Back on the town manager, we were talking about residency. What about the assistant town manager?
There are no residency requirements for any other department heads whatsoever.
None.
No. And the town manager works for the selectmen, so we think about the town charter being the constitution of the town. town manager works as a selectman. All of the other town department heads do not have residency requirements. Now, there are other requirements that come into play, and I don't know them specifically, so I won't get into them, but, with public safety workers, they have to live within a certain radius of certain places. I
Okay.
don't know what those are, but that's just public safety personnel.
Right, got it. Okay.
And, there's a number of department heads that do live in town. There are some department heads that don't live in town.
Yeah. I want to ask you about what you have on your list, inclusion of the special acts of 1987 regarding recalls.
Yes, so
Explain that to me.
the special acts of 1987 basically are specific to the town of Sandwich and are specific to recalling elected officials. But that language is not incorporated in the charter. So this basically is something that was acted upon at town meeting in the 80s that is not in the charter. And just to ensure that there's no future conflicts, questions, or confusion, town council has recommended that this language be included in the charter. So this is something that exists.
But what is it about?
It's
what
about
specifically is it?
recalling elected officials, and it's pretty extensive language actually, but it's just about the recall process.
Okay. So,
I can find the language if you want to dig into it.
no. But up until now,
This doesn't change anything.
it doesn't.
It doesn't actually
Okay.
change anything. It just really makes sure that the dots are connected between these two things.
Got it.
Because that language exists, all of this stuff ultimately becomes law within the Commonwealth. It becomes part of the sections of Mass General Law. So this basically is taking this section here and making sure that it also exists over here.
Got it. Okay.
It does sound interesting, though. It's just not that interesting.
Yeah. Well, anytime you have a recall, it's a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah.
Board chairs from having the position of chair for more than 2 consecutive.
Yes, so there's a town
Years.
bylaw that states that the chairperson of any town committee, board, cannot sit in that seat for more than 2 years. However, even though it's in the bylaw, it doesn't exist in the charter, so the charter actually overrides the town bylaws. So again, this would
Okay.
create alignment there so that those chair people cannot serve for more than 2 consecutive years. That doesn't prohibit you from serving as chairman again. You could take a year off and come back, but for more than 2 years, you cannot serve as chairman, and that would apply to every
Got it.
board within town.
Okay.
I do think that the charter review committee item of moving the charter review committee requirement from 5 years to 10 years is also a possible hot button topic at town meeting.
Why do you
So
think that?
the existing charter says that the Board of Selectmen is to call a charter review committee together every 5 years, at least every 5 years, to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen regarding changes to the charter. Now, if we rewind back, we've been doing this for almost 2 years, not entirely by our choice. There hasn't been a town meeting. We didn't have a special town meeting. We haven't had a town meeting in almost a full year, so that slowed us down considerably.
Yeah.
I do think that's a point of contention for some folks, that they wish that we acted more quickly in
Quickly.
general.
Yeah.
But unless we pushed for a special town meeting, which I didn't think was appropriate, it costs something. And also a one or handful of item town meeting that doesn't really have a headlining article, and I'm not sure this is it,
Yeah.
is likely to receive low attendance, and I didn't think that was appropriate. So it wasn't something that the committee or myself advocated for. But basically, this would tell the select board that they have to call the charter review committee every 10 years instead of every 5 years.
Yeah.
The committee's general feeling on this is that we've spent 2 years, we've dug through a lot, and does it really make sense to call another committee within 5 years? Probably not. I'm sure that some people feel differently. I would say this, regardless of the requirement says you have to call a committee every 10 years. It doesn't mean you can't call a committee every year, right?
Oh, I see.
The select board has the authority to call a charter review committee at any time they want.
Yeah.
The select board has the authority to place an article. The work that we've done is work that was prescribed by the town charter, and that's why we were pulled together to do that work. But the selectmen have the ability, as I mentioned previously, to put articles on the warrant for town meeting.
Yeah.
They can put a warrant on the town meeting article suggesting to modify the charter at any time.
Yeah.
And they don't need input from any committee to do it whatsoever.
Right.
So this just
Okay.
changes that requirement. I think that, and actually I know because I've heard from people that they don't think this is appropriate. They think that 5 years is something that's where it needs to be. So I would guess there's going to be some discussion around this item as well.
Okay. We got a couple minutes left. I want another one that you think might have a little bit of debate to it.
I think we covered it, to be honest with you, unless
Really?
I'm missing something. Those are the hot button items.
Okay. Do you feel that Jim Coogan who had said after, back on the 5 to 10 year thing, in 5 years, maybe even 10 years, this is all pretty much still going to be static. There's not going to be a whole lot of change.
Well, Jim Coogan, he said, we've done some heavy lifting here, and I think we're going to be in good shape for a while. But it's some version of that.
Do you agree?
I don't have a crystal ball about what's going to happen and what's going to need to be changed. I do know that what's been in place has been in place for well over 10 years, and it hasn't created any major complications or problems. Mm-hmm. So do I foresee necessary change within 5 years? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think that when the next big change in Sandwich Town government from a charter perspective is likely at some point when the town decides to change their form of government. Maybe that doesn't happen in my lifetime. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But at some point, I expect that the form of town government is likely to change away from the current system.
Yeah.
Maybe given the development constraints on the town and reasonably static population levels around 20,000 people, maybe that's not going to happen. I'm not sure.
Right.
But a lot of this other stuff is really just technicality stuff. I mean, there's tactical stuff that, like the appointment of vacant seats. Right. This is stuff that I've lived through, and being handcuffed against doing some of these things, especially when Mass General Law has them as being generally accepted items, is a little. It's just unfortunate because we have to consume people's time and spend taxpayer dollars to do it.
Yeah.
So let's make things as easy as they could be.
Yeah.
That would be my suggestion. All of that being said, if these things, pass and go through, that's great. If they don't, we've been doing business for a long time with what exists, and that's okay too.
Right. So we are going to hope that people come to May 6th town meeting informed, do their research, watch this, and pick up the warrant.
Find the warrant. So the warrant will be online. It'll be posted at the post offices and at town hall. You can pick up a copy of it at town hall. We're going to have a charter review committee meeting on Tuesday, April 23rd in the evening at 7 p.m. at town hall, and there will be an opportunity for folks to come in and ask questions, and we actually had done that back on November 6th as well. I'm trying to work to find a daytime opportunity, maybe folks that don't want to go out in the evening. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to work to schedule something around that in the couple weeks before town meeting, but we don't have anything solidified yet, so we'd publish that when it comes up.
Got it.
And, town meeting's on May 6th. We'll be ready to get there,
And you're going to take the lead on explaining.
I think that's likely, but it has not been officially decided. So on the next meeting we have on the 23rd, we'll kind of be putting that together. I'm putting together the draft presentation for town meeting for the presentation of the warrant article, and we'll get that kind of clarified and where we want it to be and make those types of decisions. Really, the goal is to make it as straightforward as possible, right?
Yeah.
And explain it, so.
David Sampson, thank you so much.
I thought you were going to bring up my write-in campaign for the water district. No?
Oh, yeah. If you could just stay for another 30 minutes, I just wanted to ask you about that.
Let me just change my shirt and we'll do another episode.
We'll do it all again.
All right.
All right,
Thank
Dave
you so
Sampson.
much.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Hopefully this has been helpful to you, my friends, as we're trying to learn as much as we can before we go in and actually cast that very valid, very important vote. We'll see you soon, Sandwich. Thanks.